Namaste everyone. I welcome you all to today's Yes Talk. The topic today is active aging, and our guest speaker today is Mr. Mathew Cherian. I would like to share a quick introduction for him. Cherian is a civil engineer and alumni of BITS Pilani and from the first batch of IRMA. He is an author of books and is a development worker for 4 decades. He has set up Credibility Alliance and Guidestar India for transparency in the voluntary sector. He also set up Charities Aid Foundation in India and worked with HelpAge India as CEO for 18 years and is now the global ambassador for aging with HelpAge International. His latest book is on aging and poverty in India. He is a member of the World Economic Forum Council on Aging and Longevity. Currently, he is the chair of CARE India. We welcome you, Matthew, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today and look forward to an interesting session with you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Bijlani sir and Arunima for organizing this Yes Talk on active aging. At the beginning, I would like to say that Bijlani sir has been my teacher and guru for I learned yoga under him in Nainital, and I'm forever grateful for what he taught me then. And some of those learnings can also be put into active aging. At, when Gautama Buddha was asked, is there something called aging? He said, the moment we are born, we start to age. So he said, there is nothing called aging. So maybe it is not a subject for thinking in the Buddha philosophy. But in my experience with many people, I will hold the tenet which poet Browning said, grow old along with me, the best is yet to come. So I feel the best is yet to come, and that is where we'll have to look at lessons learned in active aging. I have a short presentation to talk about, and I will share the presentation. It is on active aging, and can you see the screen? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What is happening not only in India but across the world is we are on the edge of a longevity revolution. People are living longer in India, and most of you who are on this call are likely to live up to 80 years. And the question that arises is, how do you spend these extra 20 years will entirely depend on your health. And that is where active aging comes in to the fore. And whether you want to live it in a healthy state of mind, or do you want to live with a lot of medicines and taking all kinds of cures to keep yourself alive. So how you work on this longer life is entirely up to you. And what makes us age differently? Actually, health in older age is not a random phenomenon. Actually, what makes us all age differently? First of all, some of it depends on our genetic inheritance. We inherit our genes from our parents, and some genes are inherently have a longevity gene, and it also depends on who we are and how do we practice in our lifetime, where do we live? Do we live in a polluted place like Delhi, or do you live in a air where the air is fresh, where the food is fresh? It also determines our health behavior. Health behavior is how do you spend your life? Do you live like a couch potato, or do you exercise, or do you go across doing things and keeping yourself busy? And of course, last but not least is our access to healthcare. And in many areas, access to healthcare is not there. And as a result of it, they may have lives which are not so healthy because they do not get medicines, or they are very poor to buy medicines, etc. So if you look at a lot of the determinants of health behavior in older age is determined on yourself, the way where you live, the housing, the assistive technology you use. Do you use some walking sticks, or do you use some other means of holding yourself? And the transport, because in a city like Delhi, the transport is not very much age friendly. As a result of it, older people hesitate to travel by any form of bus. Of course, the metro is more age friendly than the bus, but at the same time people find it difficult to go down the subway, go into the metro, etc. And the last but not least is the social facilities in your community and in your neighborhood, which may not be there in many cases. So if we look at it, every older person is different. Some have a functioning of a 30-year-old. When you're 80 years old, you behave like a 30-year-old, and you're able to cycle, you're able to do many activities of daily living, which is absolutely like a youngster. And some people are bedridden and require full-time assistance for basic everyday tasks. So as a result of it, health is very crucial on how you experience old age. So that is where active aging comes in. And active aging is a set of behaviors which will help you to grow old and be healthy. So if we look at it, we have this familiar graph which is called the public health framework of active aging. Everybody has an intrinsic capacity. Each, it depends on the individual how they look at their lives. And we also have a functional ability. It means the functional ability is our ability to walk, the ability to maybe run, maybe ability to do other activities. So we have an intrinsic capacity and a functional capability. And if you look at it, as we grow older, there is a declining capacity and a significant loss of capacity on all fronts. So, and the decline actually starts from the age of 45, and it goes on declining for a longer period. Now, what we are trying to do is to build your intrinsic capacity so that your functional ability will also go up. So as a result of it, this is what active aging will do it. You will become more functional. You will be able to probably walk, probably run, and maybe not a marathon, but at least you will be able to run a significant amount of time and do exercise so that you live a healthy life. So in my experience with HelpAge, we used to participate in marathons, and this is a picture from the Delhi marathon, and we have people who are even 91 years old who are able to run and able to participate in a marathon. So that is a crucial aspect of active aging, that how much are you able to exercise, how much are you able to wake up in the morning and either go for a walk or go for some form of exercise, maybe do yoga for maybe an hour of yoga. How do you manage your lives? So in old age, this becomes intrinsically important, and then your functional ability is likely to go up. And what happens is Here are some examples of people. There is Mr. J.R. Gupta, who is the president of the Confederation of Senior Citizen Associations. He is close to 80 years, and what happens is he is constantly on the move. When he wakes up in the morning, he goes to the deer park, and there are people who do exercise and they do some form of bhajans, etc. Then after that, he goes to the Confederation office, and the whole day he is active. And he consumes very little food and has a very light breakfast, but continuously keeps on the move. And he has the energy of a 30-year-old. And this is where his functional capability has gone up, and keeps yourself active. And he encourages other people also in these associations to keep themselves active. And then this is Professor Anil Gupta, who is the founder of Honeybee Network and a professor in IIM Ahmedabad, who is just, and he continues to be actively involved in innovation, in other activities, and walks every day about 5 kilometers. And in fact, in a recent visit in Sikkim, he almost walked more than 30 kilometers and keeps himself active. So the key to the whole functioning of these older people in after they cross 60 years is how much of exercise you do and how much of food do you consume. So if you look at it, the three lessons that we have learned is this: there is food which has to be consumed in moderation. There is a exercise which has to be done also in moderation. And if you can exercise for at least half an hour, and not, if you can do an hour, that is good enough, but if you can do at least half an hour. And the third and most important is social connections. You can be connected to a faith-based association, you can be involved with the Aurobindo Ashram, or you can be involved with community-based networks like senior citizens associations, or you could be involved in other community-based activities in your neighborhood. You don't have to go far. In your own colony, in your own mohalla, there will be opportunity for you to do some form of socially responsible work, and you can get involved. We did a study with Professor Anil Gupta on centenarians across the country. And in this study, which was called Shatayu and released by the former President of India, Pranab Mukherjee, the lessons that we learnt is that there were more women centenarians than men centenarians, because women are the genetically stronger species and most women live much longer than the men. This is a well-known fact. But what happened with the people is, in the centenarian group, was their food consumption was almost very little, and they exercise. There was one lady in Gujarat who used to wake up in the morning and used to travel from house to house, maybe talking to each one of them, and in the evening she used to return back to her house, and by the time she used to have a light dinner and then go to sleep, and every day this was the activity, and she was 104. And so this is how they keep themselves active and they keep themselves alive. And there was a study also across countries, and there were three blue spots which were found across the world where people were living above 100 years. One was Okinawa in Japan, one was Sardinia in near Italy, and the third was in the US in a certain group which was called the Seventh Day Adventist group. So the commonality again was in these areas was, I would tell you about Okinawa. Okinawa, the Japanese have a word called ikigai, which has now become quite popular across the world. And ikigai simply means you have to have a reason for living. And what is your ikigai? So most of you have to pursue something which is bigger than yourself. You may have to pursue either you want to pursue a spiritual path, or you want to pursue a social path, or you want to pursue some other path which is constructive and which is positive. So this is what is your ikigai. And what was found was they have a philosophy in food which is called hara hachi bu. And hara hachi bu means eat until your stomach is filled 80%. And Bijlani sir has also given this example when he was teaching yoga. Do not fill your stomach to the full. He used to say, fill it to two-thirds, which is, I think, 66.66%. Anyway, all these are good lessons, and this is how you can consume less and live longer. And they also have a third concept, which is the community concept. They call it moi. Moi is nothing but a group of friends and neighbors who get together very often. Sometimes they get together in a week, sometimes they get together in a month, but they sit and eat together, or they eat some commonly cooked food. And this is a practice in Okinawa. Okinawa being on the coast, people also consume fish. And some people have said it is due to the fish that they live longer. My, of course, understanding is whatever, even if you eat fish, if you eat it in moderation, then you're likely to live much longer. And now, when I went to Sikkim recently, I met this centenarian who was Gautam Barteng Senior, and he was a centenarian. And he said, in my village, there are more people who are living above 100 years. He said there was a person 106 years, there was another person 112 years. So there were many more centenarians. I did not have time to study these centenarians, but I feel Sikkim is India's blue zone. And what I felt was there again the same reasons were there. They were living in wonderful atmosphere with fresh air and good food. They all ate very simply, and they ate small quantities. And the Japanese also have a system that when they eat in small plates so that you don't consume much more food than what you are required to. And so this is something which I have learned. So Sikkim may be India's blue zone, and in order to live longer, there is this social connections which is very, very important. And what is happening with social connections is in the Upanishads, we have what is known as Matru-deva Bhava, Pitru-deva Bhava, Guru-deva Bhava, Atiti-deva Bhava. And when you're born, your mother is God, and when you're later your father also becomes God. And then you respect your teachers like God, and the gurus in your life become like God, and guests, of course, are treated like God. But essentially, what is being said through this whole thing is you respect your parents, connect your parents, and the intergenerational part of the whole exercise is what will keep you longer. Because in my experience with older people, I find a lot of children abandoning their parents, and as a result of it, they have less of support at home, and as they grow older, they find it very difficult. So, if you cannot do much of social service, at least you can look after your parents and look after people which will be useful for your parents. And if you think they're God, then you need to look after your gods as well. So this is what is needed at the moment. And I find that there is also, for active aging, we need to connect with the community. It could be a laughter club, it could be a yoga group, it could be a senior citizen group, it could be any connected group, it could be a faith-based group also. You could do it in a temple, you could do it in a mosque, you could do it in a church, you could do it anywhere. And if you can do that, and then you will be able to, and you will be able to connect, and you will be able to have a socially enriching life. The Sikhs have a concept of kar seva, where whenever you go to the Gurudwara, even if you are an older person, you will have to do some form of kar seva. And this is something which needs for you to be active. And if you can do this level of activity, then you will be able to lead a great life. And so at the end, I would like to quote the Buddhist Avalokeshwara mantra, which says, Om Mani Padme Hum. And Om Mani Padme Hum just said, bring out the jewel in you so that by helping others, you will be able to serve the purpose of life. So, if each one of us can do this, you will be able to serve your purpose of life, and also you will be able to grow old. So, may you all live 100 years and may you prosper greatly. So, that is the philosophy of active aging. Thank you. Thank you for your attention. I will stop here, and if any questions are there, you can.
If I may start, Mr. Matthew.
Yes.
Oh, I think it was I really, really liked the talk. And towards the end of the talk, one thought was constantly striking me that, we all talk about aging and we start realizing the significance sometime, maybe in general, conventionally, in the middle age or maybe post middle age, when we realize the value of good eating habits, good socializing, and we see that it's happening in India, at least in the metros. It is happening. Must be happening in the other towns also. It's happening. But I've been working in school, so for a long time. So, and I really think that the habit building processes in school, it should the awareness about how healthy aging, or what are the things which will help it. Initially the building blocks are always the early years. So I'll just share something that we do in our school, a very small thing. Like, we all have recesses and intervals where children bring their own food, and now the process of midday meals has also started and all. But in our school, at least in all the classes, there is a time, sometime between the recess and the time the school starts, we have a fruit break where the entire school, almost, they everybody gets some fruit or the other. Children also, teachers also, they sit and just eat that fruit. Like, we have the reading program where everything, people just stop and they read. So we have a kind of a fruit break. I think these are little, if you could throw some light on how better we could do uh, how better we could bring in an awareness and habit forming processes in schools, related, which will help in the which seeps down very deep in the children, and it becomes a habit. So if you could throw some light on that.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, it's a good thing you're doing, and helping them to eat some fruits and not some junk food. So, actually, throughout, we keep talking about eat healthy, and active aging is also about eating healthy, but also eating in moderation. And I think this lesson, of course, should go begin at schools itself, because if you do not eat in moderation, we find obesity increasing in among school children, because today's children are eating much more than the previous generation. That is one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is for active aging in schools. I've been to many schools. We talk about intergenerational. In your own colony, you may not have your own grandparents, but you can always visit an older person in your neighborhood itself and spend some time, or spend some uh, quality time with them, which will connect them, because most older people are spending lives of loneliness. So you can eradicate this loneliness by simple half an hour conversation with the older person or even listening to their stories, and this will help in a great way. So you don't have to do great social service. You can do it in your own neighborhood, in your own, near your house itself. And this will help children bond with the older people. And this intergenerational love and affection which people get is a very great pure form of love. So this is something which can be practiced, and I wish more and more school children can do that.
Yes, Nivedita, please unmute yourself and ask.
Good evening, sir. It's a wonderful, wonderful presentation that you've just kind of deliberation that you've just presented. Sir, I wanted to understand your thoughts on digitization because post-pandemic, a lot of people are talking about digitization. And as far as I see it, I mean, I would want to understand from you your perspective on how digitization and increasing digitization has its impact on people who are elderly. So I would love to hear from
Actually,
you.
yeah, digitization is a double-edged sword, and sometimes I shared a picture in school where everybody in the house were sitting on their cell phones, and the older people were sitting without cell phones, but everybody was, somebody must have been on social media, somebody must have been on WhatsApp, and they were not talking to each other. So, what is happening with digitization is older people are getting excluded from the digitization, and at the same time, the younger generation doesn't have time to talk to the older people, including their own children. So, there is a negative aspect of it, and older people find it difficult to use smartphones. They are better off with the old feature phones, the old Nokia phones, etc. And they find it easier to operate that. And so I think maybe an effort should be made by the children or the grandchildren to teach older people how to use the smartphone, how to improve the smartphone. Because I find in a house, the youngest child has the smartest ability to operate the mobile phone, whereas the older grandparent does not know how to use it. So how can we bridge this gap across both these generations? So this is something digitization. There are a whole lot of positives and negatives of old age. There is also cheating and fraudulent deals which are happening on mobile phones, etc. And people have been cheated of money through the spurious calls and all kinds of fraudulent calls. So there is a negative aspect there as well. There's more to talk about it, but yeah, these are some of the concerns.
Yes, sir. Sure. I completely agree on
Yeah.
what you mentioned. Thank you so much, sir.
If anyone else has a question, please raise the hand or put up in the chat box. Yes, Nidhi, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Matthew, hi, Nidhi here. Matthew, I was listening to you when you said you have interacted with a lot of 100-year-olds and kind of studied them. I was just wondering, how do they feel about being a centenarian? How do they feel about being 100-year-old? Because I was just wondering if I were to talk to my members, usually the refrain would be, who wants to live that long? Right? So how has been your experience on this journey?
Actually, most of the people in our initial study, Shatayu, were quite happy that they crossed 100 years. And we asked them for their memories, and some of them talked about seeing Mahatma Gandhi, listening to Mahatma Gandhi on the radio, etc. And recently, the person whom I met in Sikkim also talked about how when he was born, Sikkim was not part of India, and he knows various things which happened. The person in Kashmir was telling that he knew when Hari Singh fell off his horse, and then uh, he he remembered many aspects of the older pre-independence regime. But they were all happy to have crossed 100 years, because in one family there were five generations together living in the same house. And I thought it was a beautiful sight to see the five generations together. So there are good experiences. I maybe you work in Bangalore and other cities. I do not know how their experiences. We had not studied centenarians there, so I wouldn't be able to comment on exactly how they feel. But most of them felt quite happy to have crossed this threshold of 100 years. And
Thank you for sharing the.
Hello,
yes, Rishikesh.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Um, you have, in passing, you had mentioned about one important aspect in old age, which is important, as I see personally, is the spiritual dimension.
Yes.
The spiritual dimension grows in older people a little more naturally as a part of their lifelong experiences and exposures. And in old age, especially, it provides a good anchor because it provides a goal, a dimension of a goal and a target in life, and a direction in which one has to proceed further in life to get a degree of perfection in life which was not achieved earlier. So this, I presume, your group could throw some light. What has been their experience about this aspect of the life in old age?
Yeah. I agree. As people grow older, there is there is a search for spirituality, and I think Sri Aurobindo has also said that we are all evolving to become a better human being. So I'm I think Bijlani sir, who is on this thing, is a better guide to talk about spirituality, because he is a spiritually evolved person. So maybe I could ask Bijlani sir to talk about spirituality in maybe in this call, or maybe
Thank you.
Bijlani sir, would you be able to take a call, or you do? Because I'm not equipped to talk about spirituality. Yeah.
Well, not that I'm much better equipped, but I will say something. But let anybody else who has any questions ask, then I'll come in at the end.
Okay.
Participants, if anyone has a question, please raise the hand or you can put it in the chat box. Sir, I think you can go ahead with your views. We do not have any response as of now.
Thank you, Arunima. And thank you, Matthew, for
Yeah.
a very thought-provoking, short and sweet talk, and leaving so much time for questions. And I'm glad that some good questions really came up. Well, aging is something which is inevitable, but how we age is optional. And as you said quite rightly, we can roughly say that it's 60 plus 20. So very few live beyond 80. But all the same, the 60 plus 20 division is a very practical division, uh, because the real sort of impact of how we have lived the first 60 years is seen during the next 20. And the crucial determining factor about how happy we are during whatever uh, we are able to live out of those 20 depends upon health. And in this respect, some statistics are very interesting. An average 80-year-old is healthier than an average 60-year-old. Looks paradoxical, but that is true, because out of all those who are alive at 60, many will not live to 80, and therefore they will not contribute to the average. So that's why when we go to the 80-year-olds, they have sort of crossed the test. They have crossed that barrier. They have proven that the way they lived the first 60 years gave them this opportunity to stay, to not only stay alive another 20, but stay fairly healthy. So an average 80-year-old is actually healthier than an average 60-year-old. And that's why I found one cardiologist in AIMS, to whom if an 80-year-old or 80 plus came and asked him that I have heart disease, please tell me what type of a lifestyle I should have, what should I should eat, and so on and so forth. The cardiologist told him that we can't really tell you much. Enjoy life, live the way you have been living. Perhaps you can tell us how one can live. And one such person, what he said was, कि simple है, हाँ? खुश रहो, काम करते रहो, इधर की बात उधर मत करो, अपने काम से काम रखो. Now, very simple words, but sums up many things in a way, that stay busy and stay happy. Don't indulge in unnecessary gossip. Idhar ki baat udhar, huh? Unnecessary gossip, criticizing people behind their back, and so on and so forth. And sort of mind your own business, basically. So that's what he said. And in fact, there is a lot of wisdom in this. And as you said, there have been studies on people who have lived to be beyond 100. You have done one such study. You also pointed out some studies from Japan and Italy and the Seventh-day Adventists. One such study has been quoted by Bernie Siegel, the cancer surgeon who has taken a lot of interest in the mind-body connection. And he says that while I mean, the diet, the exercise, smoking, drinking, and all these things may be important for staying healthy, but one thing that unites all people who have lived to be about 100 and above is not actually what they have been eating and how active they have been and so on. What unites them more than any of these things, what is common to all of them, is that have always had some object to love. They've always had somebody to love, and that has been possible because they were loving by nature. They were not sort of concentrating only on themselves. They looked beyond themselves and were ready to love anybody who happened to be around. They were not strictly sort of bound by the usual relationships that I can love my family but not others. For them, it's sort of, they were more or less living the type of life based on what Maharshi Raman said, there are no others. सब अपने हैं. जो सामने है उसको अपना लो. Treat anybody who is in front of you as your own. They were living that type of a life. And that is important for them who have lived to be 100, because the fact is that not everybody else whom they knew in their earlier life has lived that long, which means that most of their friends are gone, their parents are gone, their spouse is generally gone, their siblings are gone, and in some cases, a few of their children have also gone. Which means that a lot of people whom they have loved and have had close biological relationships or close friendships, they are no more. What has kept them alive is that they have always been able to find around them people whom they could love. And in this respect, the connection with children, I think, is extremely important, as you pointed out. Connection with children, not necessarily biological children, but any children who happen to be around, and younger the better, because as you said, I mean, they have that purity, that innocence, which is very uplifting for the older person. And these children also, given the opportunity, are able to connect with the older people extremely well. And in this connection, one may also talk of digitization. While there are many negative features about digitization, people connect with everybody on WhatsApp, but not in front of them. That is the person with whom they are not connecting. All that is true. But then this is also an opportunity which can be used for establishing a bond between the younger people and the older people. Because as you said, I mean, the youngest in the family knows the maximum about how to use these gadgets. So instead of treating sort of the old person as someone who will never understand these things, leave him out. Huh? Instead of treating him that way, let them take a sort of provide them the gadget and then tell them it's not so difficult. The younger person has an opportunity to teach the older person something. And when he finds that some things are too complex, don't worry, I'll do it for you. So, uh, he can the younger person, when he does it, that also sort of can help in today's world, establishing that bond which you were talking about between the children and the older people. And this person should do it happily, not make the older person feel handicapped, that I am not able to do it and so on. It should be done with so much love and concern, and sort of so willingly and happily that the older person is happy, the younger person is also happy, that I not only am able to do something which this person can't do. Because done sincerely, giving love can give us as much joy as receiving love. And giving is always in our own hands, whereas getting is not. So younger person has that opportunity to give that love and get the joy out of it. And of course, along with goes the spiritual growth. So both are growing through this process, and this can be a very good opportunity. And then about building habits in childhood, which Mithu pointed out. It's a very good practice that schools are taking interest in this and doing something actively to inculcate at least a few good habits in children, which would be healthy. I may share with you that only today morning I was talking to my granddaughter in the US, and uh, one of them is just 11. And what she shared was that their school had given them a research project. What sort of a research project? That within your own family, you try and live your usual lifestyle for 2 weeks and follow it up with a uh, a consciously lived healthy lifestyle. So try to bring about those changes consciously, which are considered a part of the healthy lifestyle. And during these periods, at the end of the first 2 weeks, when you are living your usual lifestyle, and at the end of the second 2 week period, when you have made a conscious change in your lifestyle towards the healthier side, uh, measure a few variables, and most of these variables were psychological in nature in terms of sorts of subjective well-being, how energetic you feel, how light you feel, how good you feel, and so on and so forth. Now, this is, from a scientific point of view, a very flawed study. But at the same time, I think it is driving home an important point. It's highly flawed, so few people involved. Then you have in the control, the usual lifestyle, but then you don't have, and then the other one, you might be, and the 2 weeks may be too short a period for really things to change as a result of the healthy lifestyle. So many flaws can be found out. Small number of people, inadequate control, not a proper control, no washout period between the control and the experimental, and so on and so forth. So one can have so many point out. But the fact is that an 11-year-old is being given this type of project, actively involving them in, I think this can really teach the habits of a healthy lifestyle extremely easily without sermonizing. So this is one of the things I thought I'll share with you. And finally, the spiritual dimension, which Rishikesh ji raised. There is a story of a person who carried a purse, and he had grown old. He had in the purse the picture of a god or a goddess. And he was asked, have you always carried this picture in your purse? He said, not always. This picture was initially given to me by my father when I was a young boy. Then when I grew older, I took this picture out, kept it carefully somewhere, but in the purse I put the picture of my girlfriend. And then when I grew a little older, I put the picture of my wife. And then when I grew older, I put the picture of my child. And when I grew still a little older, I put the picture of uh, uh, the picture of God. So it had been changing from time to time. So corresponding to this, we did a little sort of an informal type of a study, or you can call it, or a survey, by giving a questionnaire to some programs which were done specifically for senior citizens. In that, one of the questions we put was, who was your most dependable support in life at age 10, at age 20, at age 30, at 40, and 50 plus? And we fell into some sort of a pattern. Naturally, everybody's response was not the same, but there was a pattern that emerged. At 10, the most dependable support was parents. At 20, the most dependable support was friends. At 30, the most dependable support was the spouse. At 40, the most dependable support was uh, children. And at 50, the most dependable support was God. So some sort of that sort of a pattern emerged. So again, it shows that there is this change which comes about, and people have a tendency to turn towards spirituality as they grow older. Now, in this connection, one might sort of go a little deeper and might say that, in fact, the purpose of life is spiritual growth or growth of consciousness. And this is best achieved by love. Now, love does not necessarily always mean loving one person or a few persons. Depending upon the circumstances, one can grow spiritually by loving just one person. Suppose that person happens to be a dependent, a parent who has become a parent who has become bedridden and needs a lot of help. Or this one person could be a child who is uh, mentally retarded or has cerebral palsy or some such problem which has made this child dependent on the parent for life. So it could be just one person, or it could be a very large number of people in the community who may not be biologically related, and you are showering your love and affection on them, uh, thinly spread, but over large numbers. And sometimes it may not necessarily be even people, although indirectly it will be people. It may be just a cause. You're passionate about a cause and you continue to work to help that cause, be it, everybody can have a pet issue, be it uh, aging, as has been the case with you, or it could be women's issues, children's issues, or uh, education, corruption, whatever fascinates that person. So the person is interested in that cause, and through that, by working in one way or the other to try to improve the situation in that area, he is also indirectly connected with people and showering his love and affection on people. So if the person remains busy with this type of a thing, then he continues to fulfill the purpose of his life. We may not look at it as spiritual growth or growth of consciousness, but the process doesn't depend upon a mental understanding of the process. It does not depend upon what we call it. But the process is going on and it is happening. And that's what keeps the person happy and also keeps the person healthy. So as we saw, the most important thing for staying healthy is in fact more psychological than the physical factors. With respect to physical factors, we are all making some mistakes or the other, some because of ignorance, some because of the compulsions of everyday life. But psychological factors, if they are taken care of, they can override even some mistakes that we make with respect to physical factors. So psychological factors are extremely important, and there's nothing that can the uh, give mental peace as spirituality can. Whether calling it by that name or not doesn't matter, but basically having a purpose in life, having a meaning in life, and expressing it by showering love and affection on others around us, uh, preferably those who are not biologically related. Not that the biological related ones have to be neglected, but as I said, they may not be always available. They may not need that love and affection. They don't need us, and still we cling to them sometimes. We get attached to them. That is not what is called for. Anyone who happens to be in front of me can be my own. And the important thing is we can give only what we have, and we can give it only to those who need it. So that fit is important, that complementary situation is important. And if one looks around and narrow boundaries of biological relationships, friendships, neighborhood, and so on and so forth. If one transcends those limitations, there'll always be someone available, some people available, whom we can give what we have and those who need it. So finding that complementary situation is what continues to fulfill the purpose of life, continues to give meaning to our life. And this purpose or meaning of life, looked at this way, is an agenda that goes on. It never ends throughout life. It goes on till the end of, till we are living. And that's how, I mean, as in your case, I mean, retirement is only a milestone. It is not the end of the work that you are doing. So this type of work goes on. It can go on indefinitely throughout life till the last breath. But then, since aging is inevitable, will there come a time when this bodily frame will be too weak to fulfill the purpose in this way? Now, that is something which is questionable. Apparently, yes, the physical frame or the mind, a person who may be physically fairly okay, but has Alzheimer's. Uh, Now, again, in relation to Alzheimer's, it may not be always avoidable, but it has been found that it can be avoided perhaps to a large extent, be it Alzheimer's or other forms of senile dementia, which are milder. They can be all avoided by just basically one thing: stay active, continue having an active mind. As they say in case of the brain, use it or lose it. If you continue using it, keep your mind active. So keeping the body active is important, but keeping the mind active is also important. If we keep the mind active, one is less likely to age and get senile dementia or more severe, a more severe form of it being Alzheimer's. So, but anyway, if it has happened, if such a thing has happened, the physical frame or the mind is no longer capable of further growing spiritually, doing something which enables this person to do something for others, then does the process of spiritual growth stop? Is this person no longer needed in this world? Now, this can be debatable. The mother has said, actually, we are not anybody to, first, she has said two important things in relation to aging, at least. Many things she has said, but at least two I can recollect right now. One, that we start growing old only when we stop progressing, which means scope for going further, progressing, spiritual point of view, going on, we are not. And the second thing she has said is that nobody can really judge when a soul becomes incapable of further growth, or further development, further spiritual growth. When an individual soul becomes incapable of further growth, we really can't judge. So just because the person can't do it through visible work, by showering love and affection on somebody, by apparently helping somebody, when the person is not able to do that because of the physical or the mental part of the frame becoming too weak and it is fragile. It can give way anyway in any of us. So when it becomes too unfit, is that the point at which one cannot fulfill the purpose of life anymore? Mother said, really, we can't always judge. And this I have realized is also very true through personal experience with some close people, I mean, with whom I've seen in their terminal phases. When they have been in their terminal phase, very often they are looked after by strangers because modern life being what it is, the children, grandchildren, all of them put together really can't provide as much care as this aged person needs. The person is on diapers, the person may be unconscious, the person may be having tube feeding, and so on and so forth. The person is at home, may be conscious, may not be conscious. Now, all these things cannot be taken care of by anybody except by through 24-hour help. And that sort of a 24-hour help is usually a paid help. That person is being paid. Now, particularly if this person is conscious or even semi-conscious, this person realizes that I'm not being taken care of by my children or grandchildren. I'm being taken care of by somebody else. This itself can contribute to the spiritual growth of this person. Why? Because quite possible that till then, the person was very family-centered and had a clear-cut sort of sharp boundary dividing people whom he considers his own, people whom he considers to be strangers. Now, this barrier has broken. He's realized that those who are not my own, whom I considered strangers, are the one who are doing so much for me. So the person feels connected to them. That barrier has been broken. And the breakdown of this barrier itself is one big contribution to spiritual growth. And this can happen in the terminal phase when this person is being looked after by strangers at home or by doctors and nurses in the hospital. And people whom he considered his own are spending much less time with him, are taking much less care of him. So that can be a possibility. But however, having said that, there come a point where a person feels that instead of living a miserable life like this, I might as well go. This also can happen, and the person may not be always wrong. And this is again something which is summed up in a mantra which is often misunderstood, the Mahamrityunjay mantra, and I'll end with that. Mahamrityunjay mantra, Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam Urvarukmiva Bandhanat Mrityor Mukshiyamamritat. Now, what this means is Om Trayambakam, the prayer is to the three-eyed God, Shiva. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam. That let me have fragrance and strength. What it means is that let me have good physical health, strength, and let me radiate fragrance. You know, a loving person always radiates fragrance around. So let me continue sweetening my atmosphere. Sort of one can look at it in a broad manner. So give me both strength and fragrance. So Gandhim Pushti Vardhanam. But then the second line, so this is considered a mantra, which will bring good health and sometimes recited when somebody is sick in the hope that this will now lead to recovery from disease. But then the second line is usually not always given much importance. Probably it's considered impolite to give importance to the second line. The second line is Urvarukmeva Bandhanat Mrityor Mukshiyamamritat. That let death give me that liberation, that moksha, in the same way as a ripe fruit falls effortlessly. So when the fruit is ripe, it falls from the tree effortlessly. So let me also not linger on. Let me not have a painful, miserable end. Let me also leave. Let me also drop effortlessly like that fruit. So the second part is also important, which means that and this has become more and more important because now medical technology is so advanced that you can virtually keep a cadaver alive. If we take breathing and beating of the heart as the two cardinal signs of life, one can put a person on a ventilator and create a semblance of breathing. And when it comes to the heart, again, there are gadgets which can just keep thumping the chest and keep the heart beating. Now, with that sort of technology available now, sometimes you could keep almost a cadaver alive, and all what it needs is to withdraw this artificial support. And that's why many people are now signing in advance DNR, what is called do not resuscitate. That please, if I happen to be in this type of a situation, please do not try to resuscitate me. So they want Urvarukma Bandhanat, Mrityor Mukshiyam Amritat. When I'm in that type of a state, then I should not linger on, I should not suffer. Let me drop, let me get the liberation that comes from death, the way the fruit gets that liberation when it drops effortlessly from the tree.
Wow, it's wonderful, yeah. Because we have been advocating a lot on end of life, that all this artificial resuscitation and prolonged putting them in the ICU for days on end in private hospitals should end, and people should, at least if you live properly, you should also die properly. So we keep talking about dying gracefully rather than dying with all tubes and pipes going all around you. So that is something which we continue to advocate. Yeah. I didn't know about this shloka, but anyway, yeah, it seems to be. Yeah. Thank you, Professor. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Matthew, sir, for the interesting session and for giving us your time. I thank you all participants for being with us. We can close today's session with a moment of peaceful silence. Namaste.